In 2011, the school district of Beloit superintendent came to the board at that time and said they would like a $20 million referendum. The board said, okay, we need money. Go talk to the public, talk to the organizations, talk to the business groups, talk to the community groups, get some feedback. By January, that ask by the administration had more than tripled from 20 million to 70 million. And that referendum passed. The administration at the time did what I believe was the right thing that should have been done. They took the time to talk to the community, to listen to the community. The community said, hey, yeah, here's some money. Here's even more money than what you actually asked for the first time around. I believe that involving our community is essential to having a successful referendum. In the past 18 months, we've had failed referendum questions. I'm concerned that we are going down the same path and expecting different results. I want a referendum to pass as much as anybody. In fact, I don't want to ask for $9 million. I want to ask for more. But I want to show our public that we are going to spend the money wisely where we need it most. Most board members have the same financial outcome as everybody else in our community, and that is the societal gain we're all going to achieve when we have a high. Is that my phone or? Okay. A high achieving school, high academics, students that are successful educationally, physically, emotionally. These are what the things we want. This is what I believe we all want. There may be some that don't. I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, we want that school. We really want the same thing. And I think it's going to be a stronger, more well-planned referendum if we can have input from the community. We have this ad hoc committee right now looking at what our needs are. I'm concerned if we go to the public in November and say, give us money, it's going to look like a money grab. Furthermore, if our November referendum fails, what's going to happen in April? Are we going to be able to achieve a successful referendum in April if we haven't done our due diligence now? That's my 2 cents. Thank you. Megan Miller has her hand up.
I believe Board Member Levy was first.
Board Member Levy.
Thank you. And thank you, Board President Johnson, for acknowledging that I did email you and ask for this agenda item. Is there a reason you chose not to respond to me?
By the time I received the feedback from the one board member who was on the fence, it was Monday. I was out of town and with spotty internet.
Thank you for going on record with that clarification. Much appreciated.
Board Member Levy.
I just spoke. I believe you meant Board Member Miller.
Okay, that was all you wanted? You didn't want to weigh in on the referendum?
Oh, I'll get to that, but that was my first question. Thank you.
Board Member Miller.
Apologies for interrupting just there. Hi. All right. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to meet. I definitely really appreciate it. A lot of what you just said, Board President Johnson, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts, resonates and makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to share with you, I guess how personally I'm seeing it a bit differently. We've had all summer to have discussions with the community. We've had all summer as a board to talk about what types of questions or anything like that we could ask, because one of the most important responsibilities that a school board has is to approve a balanced budget and to, as long as it's possible, right? And to ensure that we're providing a direction of academic achievement and safety for our students, right, in short. So I guess my concern is that the reason that we have a short time frame is that we haven't made space in our work this summer to have these discussions. In terms of the background on the board referendum from, I can't remember, was it 2012 or 2013? Is it 2012? Okay. So I hear that. A lot of things are different now, 12 years later, not only with our community, but with the state of public education in general, locally, statewide, and nationally. Excuse me. And I think we have gotten a lot of really meaningful impact. Many of the community members who are here this evening came to the library and gave us some really, I thought, solid, really good information, which I wish I had in front of me when we had all of our comments, little packets, but I've got that in the folder at home. I should have brought it. All that just to say, we just got a really strong, very specific message from our BEA. And I want to just highlight some of those points because I think, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but one of the things that I believe I've heard a lot about in terms of concern has to do with behavior and discipline. We also have shown year-over-year academic improvement so that, you know, people can choose to do what they want with that information. But if you go to the DPI website, you'll see year-over-year improvement. And I'm excited to hear because I anticipate that that trend is going to continue on this DPI report card. But of course, that information is currently embargoed, right? So we can't definitively say that. But that is what I suspect will occur. I'm a parent. I have 3 kids in our schools. I feel fabulous about the experiences that they're getting, but I know that not every parent does, and I know that we all have had those different experiences. So rather than just like my own thoughts, I just want to highlight what our BEA has to say. They're concerned about staffing. There are many open positions still right now that we're unable to fill, and a lot of that has to do, probably not all of it, but I have to believe that some of it from a board standpoint has to do that we're not able to properly resource and compensate our teachers. We are doing the best we can. I applaud our administration and our building level and COLAC and every teacher in their classrooms because they're all scrambling to do the best that they can with what they're able to. And they're all working very hard to do so. But they're literally asking us, the board, to create space with our administration to hire, she says, more paraeducators, because the quote from the email that she sent was, the needs of students, not just special education students, continue to increase. Another ask that they have that would require us to go and ask the community for funding would be to increase staff to maintain or reduce the recommended class size average listed in board policy to aid, to assist, right, in student achievement and to assist with behavior issues. Segueing then to those behavior issues, another reason that I think it's really important for us to go to referendum is that the community is looking for change, and they should be. In order to make those changes, we have to give, not, and I'm not just talking administration, I'm talking our paraeducators, our classroom teachers need more support, and literally what that will cost is different use of facility space, to have things like buddy rooms. So when there is a child who is dysregulated in a classroom, who is being disruptive to learning and possibly creating a safety concern, that there is a space for that child to go to where they can regulate and, if possible, return back to class. That is a practice that's been utilized both in my experience teaching here at Beloit Memorial, when I taught at Whitewater, where I currently teach now. We have spaces where children can go to try to get it together. And if they are able to safely and productively return to class, that's the goal, is kids in classrooms. And if they can't, it would be so amazing if we had the funding to pay for trained behavior specialists to be able to work with those students. And maybe they do need to find a different place. But the point is we have to have the staff, and we have to have the space, and we have to have the resources for both of those. And currently, we're not in a financial situation where we're equipping our teachers with what they need to create safer spaces to really actually address those behavior and discipline issues. And I think, to me, it's just one of 7, that was what struck me the most in the comments that we heard from the BEA. And I'll just say one more thing that she highlighted in her words. She says money should be allocated toward alternative education programs to help support the behavioral needs of students, such as therapeutic classrooms and or a school within a school model at the middle school and high school levels. And she says this because we need more staff, which comes with a cost, a very specific financial cost, to support students with behavioral needs, more psychologists, social workers, and counselors, or perhaps bring back behavioral specialists who worked in the buildings with students on a day-to-day basis. The way that they concluded, I'll remind us all, she says, with appreciation for us listening, she's urging us to think about what they've outlined for us, and they're asking us to ask the community in November. If we were to go to referendum in November, and if it were to pass, which statistically even it has a better chance of doing so, it is possible that even within this school year, we could pay for things that will help address those behavior and discipline concerns. So to conclude my thoughts on the matter, both my direct experience as a parent and seeing my own child, my own 3 and their growth of their peers, their friends, and what we can see on our DPI report card, I feel like we're going in the right direction academically, but we're not going to fully realize that potential until we can actually pay for what our kids need to deal with those behavior and discipline issues. Thank you.
Any other board members wishing to weigh in? Mr. Hankins?
I loudly hear what Mrs. Miller is saying, and I loudly hear what Mrs. Johnson is saying. I also listen to the taxpayers, the people who will fund this. There's a way to do all of these things together. I personally believe that if whenever a said referendum is proposed and passed, that a selling point would be if those dollars are directly tied in the referendum to the classroom. And whatever Megan just said, support. When we ask for $9 million and 25% goes here, 25% goes there, 25% goes somewhere else, it gets lost. Student achievement is still our number one responsibility right now, along with fiscal responsibility. So having said that, and getting the input that we are getting, very intelligent ad hoc committee, I think we're in a rush to push this through. And I'm not sure, Mrs. Miller, I'm not sure. I really don't know when if a referendum passed in November, if those dollars would be available for the 24-25 year. I'm not arguing the point. I just don't know. A well thought out referendum for the spring is much more agreeable to me, with the caveat that a majority of that said ask is dedicated to the classroom, and bolstering our student achievement is what, obviously we should be getting better. We are at the bottom. We should be getting better. We need to address student achievement. And if that's where the money's going to go, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Any other board members?
Mrs. Levy has her right to start.
Okay, Brian Anderson?
I think Board Member Levy has had her hand up for a bit. I don't know if she still had something to weigh in.
I don't know if she can hear us.
I can absolutely hear you. I was just waiting to be acknowledged. And since I've already spoke once, I am completely fine with letting my colleagues who have not provided input to allow them to go first. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Anderson?
Thanks, Amy. I'll be brief. I think, I don't think anybody can question the need and some of the things that Member Miller pointed out and that Mr. Hankins spoke about, wide-ranging support for everything you said. We're woefully underfunded. The nation's school system's underfunded, right? So the next question I think we have to ask ourselves is, what's the best path to an approved referendum? Because that's what it's going to take to fund the basics, let alone the wish list, right? And I think our best foot forward is going to be how do we get past. We've got reality, and Megan pointed out the reality of how things are underfunded. What programs can we fund to support student achievement, support safety in the buildings, all the things that I think unanimously we all agree with. I think the path to get there undoubtedly is more than just the facts. It's perception, and I think we've taken some steps. We've said, hey, let's do an ad hoc committee let's see what's important to them. We haven't heard from them yet. Do I think we could have gone in November? Well, we can't turn back time. I think if the work was done this summer, we could have gone in November. There's no fingers to point there. What it is I don't think we've done what we need to do. I think we hear from the ad hoc committee. I think we hear about we have a preliminary budget that's not balanced. So if we say we're going to ask and we're going to go on Tuesday, what are we asking for? We don't know what we need. We don't have a completed budget yet. So is it $100 million? And I'm being facetious a little bit, but I'm saying we don't know what that is. I do like Mr. Hankins' thought of when we do go to referendum to support 100% in the classroom, student achievement, student discipline, and part of that reason is a lot of the cuts we've had to make have had to come from those spaces because that's where the majority of the funds go. And so when we say, hey, some of these cuts on the backs of teachers, it's because that's where the biggest bulk of the money has come from. So as much as that's possibly a necessary evil, when we go to referendum, that's where we got to pump it back and focus to get that money back to. But I want to wait and see what the ad hoc committee thinks. I've sat in on those, and I think there's some good thoughts. And I know I think we're all working to the same spot. I don't think that happens by Tuesday. So I would not support going in November. And if we do what we're supposed to do, I think I can support it in April. But needing money and I think having the right to ask for money are two different things. We 100% need the money. I don't think we have the right to ask for money today. That's all I got.
Mr. Schneider, your hand is up.
I agree with what everybody has said. We should have started this work a long time ago to continue to work with this. We need to continue to reach out. My concern is the longer we wait to pass a referendum, the longer that our students are going to go without the resources that they need, without the proper staffing within the buildings. And while we're making gains in academic achievement and behavioral issues, we still have a long ways to go. And as we are forced to reduce staffing numbers, that's going to impact the ability to achieve both of those goals, as we don't have the staff that is necessary to accomplish that. I agree that the ad hoc committee hasn't reported back yet. Again, what that is looking at this coming year's budget, and to be able to balance that budget. The need for the referendum to pass is not going to change, no matter what the ad hoc committee comes up with. The dollar amount might at some point, but if we approve a referendum for a larger dollar amount, and we don't need it, we don't necessarily have to accept it at that point. once it goes through. I think that as a board, we need to step up and honor our responsibility to make sure that our district is fully funded.
Thank you. Brian Nichols? Ms. Levy?
Thank you so much. I am absolutely in support of going to referendum in November. I am in support of standing in solidarity with our BEA, who has made a very specific request that we go in November. I would love to hear from the administration. Well, let me back up. I am completely fine with using the same language that we used in our spring referendum with an updated number. Thank you, Board Member Anderson, Brian Anderson, for laying out and kind of get us thinking about what are the next steps to pass a referendum. Well, for me, the main point is you can't pass a referendum that is not on the ballot. So for me, that is step one. Again, I'm comfortable with our previous language structure. I would like to hear from the administration about what the number to ask for is. I can make myself available if necessary to meet again on Monday to finalize this. And I think we need two things in order to pass a referendum. I think we need to continue to itemize where our cuts are being made and be very intentional about making that public. And we also need to show our intention of where the referendum dollars, once passed, what categories those will be spent on. And I think if our public sees those two things very clearly and on a consistent basis, that the referendum will be successful. Thank you.
Michelle, is Brian Nichols still with us, or?
I had him on the phone, but I couldn't put him on speaker. Sorry. I had Board Vice President Nichols on the phone, but when I had it on speaker, it was like, she, so I disconnected when we went to do the pledge because we weren't pausing to wait for him then. Thanks.
Mr. Schneider, while we're waiting, is your hand up again? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
That working? Nope. Okay, hold on. Try again.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, sorry for the issues. It's been very frustrating. I had a good signal, I could hear, I could see, and then it all gone south, so my apologies. Technology is winning the game, I think. Well, here's where I'm coming from. Everybody has made great points. Board Member Miller, you brought up the report from the BEA the other night, very detailed, and it was a very good report. But one of the things that was very specific in that report was that we had to provide the public with detailed information before and going into a referendum question, and we have not done that. That has not been done, and at this point in time, Mr. Chady and the Business Finance Office are super busy trying to get a balanced budget, and to throw them under the throes of additional work at this point in time, I think would be very detrimental to the process moving forward. Also, I think the most important thing is the constituents that I'm talking to and hearing from, and other members of the public, and honestly, other people in the district. This is rushing it. This is not the right way to go. if we were to go to referendum and fail, we would shoot ourselves in the foot for the spring, where we could possibly go to two for two referendums. So I think we need cool heads here today and think about this. This is not the right. This is the wrong time. We've not passed 3 referendums in a row, and I know one of those was capital, but it's still a referendum. It didn't pass, and 2 operational referendums didn't pass. And to put a 4th out in basically in less than 6 months is the public's not going to be happy with us. I know our academic achievement has improved a little bit, but we're still barely over 50%. And in my book, 50% out of 100 is not a great space to be in at this point. So my recommendation is that we wait and get additional information, as Mr. Board Member Anderson said, from the ad hoc committee, and we start working toward doing something in April of 2025. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Ms. Miller? Ms. Miller?
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to let Vice President Nichols finish his thoughts to Ms. Schultz. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. So I guess there's 2 different ways. I use this expression a lot this summer. I find more and more every day. Many good paths up the mountain. And I totally respect everything I'm hearing. And I believe that everybody who has weighed in so far this morning shares my desire to give our children, certainly, and our teachers, what they need. And I hear 2 different perspectives about the best way to get there. So I'm going to be happy as a human being, like on a person, like we're good, whichever way we go. But I'm going to make a pitch one more time for November with full respect to what I've heard, because I do actually, especially really want to lift up, I guess, like what Mr. Hankins and Mr. Anderson have said too. To the points you've made are excellent. I have a thought though that like we can also kind of honor your very well thought out, points there and still possibly make this work for November. So I just want to make sure I've got my notes here. So the itemizing our cuts makes so much sense to me, and I think that the best time to not overly burden Mr. Chady and his work is to itemize our cuts like while we're currently working on a budget. So we have to have, ideally, right, our balanced budget very shortly ahead of what would be the November 5th election. So his team is already, I'm sure, burning the midnight oil to make this work for us. And I really appreciated what Board Member Levy said about being very transparent and explicitly communicating with the community. Like, we know we have issues with like academics and behavior, but here are the cuts that we're making that are specific to what would otherwise help us increase our academic growth and mitigate behaviors, right? Because we are making those cuts. I've just heard from 2 people this week since our Tuesday meeting about cuts that we're making in their buildings that they believe are going to be incredibly detrimental both to academics and behaviors. And that's not because the district doesn't want academic growth or for us to be able to be responsive to those needs. It's because we just don't have the resources, and the cuts got to come from somewhere, right? And I echo Board Member Schneider's concerns about these are real children and families who are really going to, right, like this isn't a theoretical conversation. These are families and kids who are going to suffer with less this year because we have not yet passed a referendum and we do not have those funds. And that needs to be said. So having pointed that out, I really wholeheartedly support Mr. Hankins' suggestion that things need to be itemized and clearly directed. Like we would need this amount of dollars to go to classrooms for these specific purposes, whether it's academic intervention or behavior and a behavior support system. I'm going to lean on our administration because they're operationally kind of, aware of what, that's beyond what we would know as a board, but I'm sure our administration has a sense of what that would look like. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do, and I agree. I've heard the same thing, that people would be willing to vote for it if they knew exactly where the money was going. To me, this is the best opportunity, since we're currently making a budget, to itemize what are those cuts and people can see the harm, unfortunately, and to say if we had these dollars, here's how it would directly benefit kids and teachers. I think the specificity is a really important point. My last thought, I guess, that I want to share is just a question. Those who are saying we're not demonstrating enough academic achievement, how will pulling back, and it's not like these programs. I mean, we're talking kids and teachers. No one's talking about, we need millions of dollars to fund a program that's going to magically do something. That's not what works. There is no one size fits all that produces better academic growth or behaviors. All of us are unique, different people, and that's the power of a teacher. The power of a teacher is that relationship building and their expertise to diagnose and respond and grow each of their kids, and that's where our money needs to go, in my opinion. So, how is cutting back not just the number of staff, but the support that those specific staff members and teachers specifically have, how will that produce the academic achievement that the community is looking for? Wouldn't it be better to say, we've already cut into bone, there's no frivolous programming? At this point, we got to give teachers what they need, and we need more teachers to do what we need them to do. So I'll just leave it with that question.
Thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion on this item?
Could we hear from Dr. Garrison, actually, before we do?
Oh, is his hand up? Sorry. Dr. Garrison?
Thank you, Board President Johnson. One of the hardest parts about being a district administrator and, of course, overseeing the day-to-day work in the school district is that inside work is it's a lot that is happening. We've been talking about referendums and the need for referendum of course since I've arrived, and it is not the intention of the district administration to, of course, go to referendum and not pass. That's what everybody's goal is, to go to referendum and pass. And I think Mrs. Johnson stated it, Mr. Hankins stated it, Mr. Anderson stated it, Mrs. Levy stated it, Mrs. Miller stated it, Mr. Schneider stated it. Am I missing anybody? Everybody stated that, we want to go to referendum and pass it. With that being stated, it has always been the district administration's goal to support the will in which the board wants to move forward with. So whether we go here in November, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and we're going to do everything that we can to get the job done. Whether we go here in April, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do everything we can to get the job done. But most importantly, the board has to also roll up its sleeves and do everything it can to get the job done as well. One of the things that I believe that's super important in this conversation is that all of us, the board, the administration, and the teachers all come together and move this conversation forward with our community. I think that would be so important in this conversation. And over the courses of the past over the past two referendum opportunities that we've had, one could question whether or not we've had all of us really moving forward in the same direction at the same time. It is my responsibility to bring us to that conversation and do and do the best job I can in order to make that happen. But I think it'd be very important, no matter when we go, seriously, no matter when we go, for all of us to be really on the same page as it pertains to what we really want to see happen here in our school district. And I'll be honest with you, Beloit is one of the greatest districts you have in the state of Wisconsin, period. And I believe that. I truly believe that there is some very fertile ground here, in the school district of Beloit. And I know once we all come together, we'll be able to see the fruits that we really want to see. The district has made some significant cuts over these past 2 years, and I don't think anyone is questioning that. I don't think anyone is questioning that. District has made some significant changes in our school district over the past 2 years. Um, and probably even before that. I always say stuff was going on before we all arrived together, right? And so I truly believe that we'll continue to make these changes. Um, but again, it comes with a high cost when we are not able to do the day to day things that we need in order to be successful, on a regular basis. People can keep saying, we want more academic achievement, more academic achievement, more academic achievement, and we're going to keep doing everything we can to provide that every day. Because I know no teacher wakes up in the morning and says, "Let's see how I'm not going to meet academic achievement for our students." We're going to keep doing everything we possibly can to make sure that's happening. And over the course of these past 3 years, we have seen some success in this area. Our numbers have changed in this area, and not just in that area, but also in the areas of student discipline. We've been able to maintain our overall attendance. The goal, of course, is always and will always be for us to continue to get better in every area, and that's including in the area of fiscal responsibility. In this case right here, I've told people over and over, is not mismanagement of school funds that we have ran into. Is really just a funding conversation that we have to address overall in the state and both locally, with requests for referendum. And so, with that being stated, again, district administration is willfully willing to go, whether it's like again here in November or willfully willing to go here again in April. That's always going to be my stance, you all. I don't want anyone to feel as if, I'm overly November or overly April. But when you look at the research and the data, November does give us the better opportunity, of course, based off of the data here in the state, to be successful. It's a high presidential election. I'd be remiss without making that statement. I do believe there's going to be a higher voter turnout in this space, which again, I think everybody will agree to that as well. But we have to do what's in best interest of our community. And the board sets that direction for me. And so I want to make sure you all are, keenly aware of the kind of just the stats, which I'm pretty sure you all are aware. And I'm here to support that work in whatever way we can to make sure that we have a successful past referendum here in the near future, whatever it will be. Thank you for allowing the conversation, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Dr. Garrison, now, my understanding, and this is from when Mr. Chady was at a meeting earlier this summer when we were talking about possibility of a referendum, my understanding from his comment was that it doesn't matter if we go to referendum in November or April, the district would be receiving the money at the same time. Is that correct?
So if we win in November, we could receive money this year. So I'm not sure of all the information that was shared at whatever specific conversation. There's been many, right? So, but if we win in November, there could be ways in which we could receive some of the money in this school year.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Gia, Brian Nichols was requesting to speak again.
Oh, please.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, thank you. I'm really confused how the money could be received this year when we have to have the final budget done and the tax levy set by the end of October, almost a week before the election. So if the tax bills are all set to go out, how would we get any of the money in 24, 25? I firmly believe that we would not receive it until the 25-26 school year.
Dr. Garrison, did you hear that?
I did, and I'm not sure how to respond to the statement. I do believe that in my conversations with Mr. Chady, there are ways in which we could recruit some of the funds this year. Um, there's different ways that we can write this question. So let's just say we wanted to use some of the, just hypothetically speaking, let's say we wanted to use $500,000 towards our deficit this year, towards this referendum. That could be written into the question, and that money could be received in this fiscal year. Now, the next 3 years or 2 years or whatever the board sets for as it pertains to a time frame, non-recurring, recurring space, that money will then be received in the following and subsequent years. But there are ways in which you could receive some of the funds in this school year based off of how we write the overall question. Now, with that being stated, I always say, I can always reach out to Mr. Chady for a better explanation, and he'll give you, of course, his commentary around that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Levy?
Thank you so much. Point of information, Dr. Garrison, does the administration have a recommendation if there was a motion to go to referendum of the amount that would be requested? And then again, I will make myself available if we need to continue this meeting on Monday to get this done.
Sure. So based off of the conversations from Tuesday and knowing that this conversation will be coming, me and Mr. Chady have had some general conversations around what that number could be. And again, it's also based around if the board wants to write in certain, monies to look at this year's current deficit. With that being stated, we are, of course, trying to finish out a budget model. And I cannot 100% tell you as a school board currently that we will have a definite number. However, I can tell you that we will be probably under the $9 million number, closer to that $7 million number as a request to get us, over, of course, hopefully it'll be, whatever you decide, 3-year reoccurring, 2-year reoccurring, but it'll look somewhat towards that $7 million number. More information could be gathered based off of the board says we want to go, and then that gives us a little bit more time over these next actually 2 days, 24 hours, 48 hours to really hammer down an exact number. But again, that's just, kind of where we are now, knowing that the budget model for next year is still in development based off of what's getting out of this year. And so that's, full transparency kind of where we are as a school district.
Ms. Miller, your hand is up.
Yeah, could you just share the note that was, so we could all see
It says, please explain this money will not come to us until 2025-26. Regardless of if it is in November or April, we won't get it for this year either way.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And it would be wonderful if Mr. Chady or somebody from WASBO could maybe, I don't need it, it's fine. I trust your reading, it's okay. If Mr. Chady or somebody from WASBO could clarify that, that would be great. I agree.
Tom?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on the whole budget process. And again, I was elected in April, along with the referendum when it was soundly defeated. And it seemed to me as I got on the board that so much was wrapped up into the acceptance or passage of that said $9 million that after it failed, the district was in a quandary on what was Plan B? We're going to scramble. We're going to defer. My point is, we talked about the pressure on our business and finance and budget. If there is a spark of hope that whatever the ask is, $4 million, $5 million, $9 million in November, there's always going to be that out there when they're trying to get this budget passed before that even happens, that might happen. But again, I personally don't believe it will happen. So I think it's putting more strain on the budgetary people to have a referendum hanging out there in November when we haven't even got to our budget yet. I just think it's on the back of your mind going, well, we could get it, we might get it, but we might not get it. So I think everything I've heard here has not really changed my mind too much. I agree with everything. But from what I'm hearing as a common sense person, we need more information to make this pass or have a chance of it passing. I don't believe that a presidential election, yes, it will add more people. I don't know why everyone's thinking that the disparity between the no's and the yeses from April will magically disappear because we added 2,000 more voters. I don't understand that logic. There's going to be more voters, there's going to be more no's, there's going to be more yeses. The yeses will be yeses, and the no's will be no's. That won't change, I believe. So I just wanted to, I don't want to have a false sense of, to our district and our budgetary people, that we might pass something. We might. But we can't live in that world. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other board members wishing to weigh in? Oh, sure thing. Fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Shope and Board President Johnson. Again, the tax levy will be set. The tax bills will be set. The money that we get comes from the taxpayers after they've gotten their tax bill. How can that happen when it's not in the process? It's not in the backing of the tax levy that we have to send to the city before the 1st of November. It doesn't make sense. I hear what everybody's saying, but it sounds like to me, it sounds like wishful thinking, and we don't have the facts in front of us that says that if we passed a referendum on the 3rd, I think it's the 3rd or 4th, I can't remember the day, of November, after we've already sent the tax levy to the city, that we're going to get money in the spring. It doesn't add up. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Megan Miller, is your hand up, or is that from previously?
It is, but I'm wondering if some of my questions or comments are going to be covered by Dr. Garrison, and he hasn't had much of a chance to speak, so if he'd like to go first, I'm fine with that.
Okay, Dr. Garrison. Dr. Garrison, you're muted.
Got to push the mute button there. Sorry about that. Is also determine when the revenue authority will be utilized or if granted. So the school board does have the ability to adopt and purpose a 24 operational referendum. If adopted by the school board, it could implement in the current 24-25 school year to help offset any current budgetary deficit or plan to take effect or you can plan to plan it for it to take effect in the following year, 25-26 school year. This was a specific write-up me and Mr. Chady was going back and forth on, and this is kind of how he explained it to me. Again, I'm not trying to, determine whether or not the revenues will be used in November or whether this school year or next year. Because I guess this overall conversation is really about whether or not we want to go in November or in April. But again, based off of my conversations with Mr. Chady, we could use some of these funds this school year. And Mr. Nichols, I understand your thoughts there. But again, I'm just going based off of my own conversations with Mr. Chady and, of course, document that we have, between each other in this conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to circle back to, because I think Mr. Schneider and Mr. Hankins brought this up, but I also wanted to weigh in that I think it's fabulous that we have this ad hoc committee. I am sure they're going to give us, and I think in general we need to make this more of a practice of getting more community buy-in, more hands, more eyes, that's important stuff, right? Absolutely. We will have to still honor their work for this year, because if we were to pass a referendum in November, that money's not coming tomorrow, right? So we're absolutely, I have a lot of gratitude for the people who are working hard in doing that. And of course, we're going to have to let them weigh in. I think they're due to report Tuesday, I thought. So we'll know sooner rather than later kind of what that direction is. And so, I mean, this is like a both and. We can certainly honor that work and hopefully expand more opportunities for people to get involved. And respect the work that they're doing and what they have to say. So I wanted to just sort of revisit that point that Mr. Schneider brought up earlier. I do believe Mr. Hankins in the professionalism of our budget staff. Mr. Chady told us exactly what would happen if the referendum were to fail in April, and what he told us is happening. He said, we'll have to cut $10.8 million. He said, I've got some thoughts on exactly where that will come from off the bat, but some of it we'll have to see. It depends on staff turnover, and there are a lot of moving pieces. So I guess I don't see us, while it might, I imagine, feel like a bit of a scramble for the people who have to do this work, this isn't like a surprise. It wasn't like we had all of our eggs in this basket and our finance staff was just, oh yeah, we're going to pass this, and then was caught by surprise. Mr. Chady has done a fabulous job explaining to us all throughout last year and into this year, this is what will happen if we pass it in April, this is what will happen if we don't. And I have not been surprised by any of the budget updates that we've gotten, because it's exactly what he said would happen. So I just wanted to reassure you. I think you brought up a good point, and I just wanted to add some context to that. And then I did just want to share one more thought from an independent research group. You can find this on your own from the WisconsinPolicyForum.org. Since 2009, as we've heard many times, revenue limit increases have lagged inflation. Over time, school districts' reliance on revenues from successful referenda has grown. In 2022, 100 districts drew on these dollars to fund more than 10% of their total education costs, and that is according again to research from Forward Analytics, which is an independent nonpartisan group that was asked to do this work by our state legislature. Having said that, I just wanted to kind of take any I don't really know what the right way to say this is. There's not credibility, I guess, behind the idea that somehow our district has been poorly managing funds. My grocery bill in 2012, when that last referendum passed, and certainly in 2009, is much different than it is today. Anybody can plainly see that things cost more now in 2024 than they did in 2009 or even in 2012 when the last referendum passed. So because schools have not gotten an inflation, like a cost of living increase commensurate with how inflation has gone up, since 2009, you can plainly see it's nationally, but Wisconsin in particular, across the state. Sun Prairie is going to referendum. Janesville is going to referendum this November. Madison is going to referendum this November, and that's just, I'm sure many, many more will as well. So I understand that we can all have different opinions and perspectives about how best to serve our kids, but to say that or suggest that whether it's the board or the administration has not prioritized academics, behavior, and discipline in the best way possible is just not accurate. And so I just wanted to bring that into the conversation. And that's something that is the work of the board, because we are that bridge between the community and the administration to help people see. Imagine what your budget would be like if you had not gotten a raise up to inflation since 2009, right? So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. So the only question is, and because Board Member Nichols mentioned, we have the tax levy set in October, but Dr. Garrison says, we can utilize those funds. So my only question is, and this is just the banker in me, we can utilize funds because we've been promised the funds, but is it the fact that would we need to borrow the funds in this upcoming 24-25 fiscal year to utilize the funds, knowing that we could pay it back once we actually receive the funds, starting, January 1, 2026? Because once the tax bill is set for next year, it's set. So I'm just curious. Yes, we can utilize funds, but would we need to borrow the funds in order to use them because we would not have actually received them?
Dr. Garrison?
Sure. I mean, from a borrowing perspective, I think we will have to. There's adjustments that are going to have to be made, regardless. Again, this is really based off of what the board sets the question around. I think that's part of if we're going to go, because right now we're putting a little bit, we're getting ahead of we're putting the cart before the horse in some cases. If we decide to go, we have to set the question, and it has to be set based off around what we will want to see. Again, the board, any proposed November 24 operational referendum, if adopted by the school board, could be implemented in the current 2024-2025 school year to help offset the current budgetary deficit, or be planned to take effect in the latter year, in later years, 25, 26, 27, 28, 27, 29. It depends on how many years we set the recurring or non-recurring conversation. And so it's kind of hard because, again, we haven't necessarily set the question to determine that. So that's kind of how I'm running back and forth on that same statement over and over. I don't want to misspeak on when the funds will actually come outside of, borrowing. And, those dates are always kind of funny because we get bills, I hate to say it, all throughout the year. We won't get our, final allocation until sometime here in October. And it's just a weird, space that we have to kind of keep working through from a budgetary perspective and from the state. There's no perfect way for me to answer that question than the way I'm currently answering it, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. Brian Anderson?
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know if I was unclear, with my point, but the point is, because the point's been made by others, let's go in November because we want to utilize these funds as soon as possible. And that's a valid point, because sooner is better than later when we're talking about how do we address our funding shortage and student discipline and student achievement, so 100% sooner is better than later. So my point is, and my question is, if we pass a referendum, insert dollar amount here in November, we could adjust our budget and we could allocate those funds in this upcoming year. We could do that. We can adjust the budget anytime we want. My question is, would we receive those funds in the upcoming current fiscal budget year that we're working on, or would we need to borrow the funds, knowing it's coming because we passed a referendum, borrow the funds that we've allocated but have not yet received to pay for all the programming that the referendum passed said we were going to support? And I think that's a simple question that I don't know, but I think the timing of, if a referendum passes in November, when are the funds received? Not when we can allocate them, but when are they received? And if you allocate them before they're received, the obvious, I think, answer is we'd have to borrow the funds. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but would we need to borrow the funds to use allocated funds from a past November referendum?
Mr. Hankins?
This is all healthy conversation, but it becomes moot if it doesn't pass. We talk about borrowing funds that we haven't even sniffed around if it's going to pass or not. So I understand it's very healthy to have this if it passes. We're looking November 4th or whatever the date is. You got to go back and look at if it doesn't pass, and look at that to be realistic about it.
Anyone else wishing to weigh in on this discussion? Does anyone wish to make a motion at this time? Ms. Miller?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education go to referendum in November and that we work with our administration, finance, and legal team to craft an appropriate question that is reflective of needs directly related to academics, behavior, and discipline in our classroom environments.
Second.
There is a motion by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Levy. Michelle, would you mind reading back the motion and then do a roll call? Thank you.
Could I please get Ms. Miller to repeat her motion? I only got part of it.
Yeah, no problem. I should have written it down because I wasn't ready to quite make a motion, so I'll do my best. I'd like to move that the Board of Education work with our superintendent, our financial and legal team to create a referendum question for this November. That would request funds to be directed right then to classrooms for academics and behavior and discipline. And I suppose I neglected to include appropriate staff compensation. Does that work?
Okay, so this is what I got. Move to go to referendum in November and work with our administrative and legal team to create a question that would request funds to be directed to classrooms for academics and behavior and discipline and appropriate staff compensation. And it was moved by Miller and seconded by Levy.
Ms. Levy, there's a slight change in that. Do you still support your second on that?
I do. Thank you so much for confirming.
Thank you. May we get a roll call vote, please?
Okay.
I'm sorry, any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Thank you.
Okay. Schneider?
Aye.
Amy Levy?
Aye.
Brian Nichols? Brian, are you still there? Brian?
Nay.
Say it one more time.
Nay.
Brian Anderson?
Nay.
Tom Hankins?
Nay.
Megan Miller?
Aye.
Tia Johnson?
Nay.
Motion failed.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Oh, actually,
So moved.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Levy. Do we, at this stage, want to give some direction to our administration about whether there is an intention in a maybe if it doesn't have to be committal, like I don't know that we need a motion, but I guess I'm curious of my colleagues since we voted this down, and so we can make appropriate use of our time as a board and with the administration. Is there an interest and desire to go in April? I don't think we need to make a motion because I totally appreciate we certainly don't have enough information for April. But could we have some discussion around that?
Wait, or we should get. We did the motion, so we're done.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just weigh in. For everything I heard today, I think it definitely is in the realm of possibilities for April. I think everybody at the board level here was on board with it, at least discussing it. So I think it's well said that we at least put it on the back burner, but move forward. But we have to. Yes. Yeah.
Any other board members wishing to weigh in? Dr. Garrison? You're muted.
Yeah, sometimes sorry, a little late. Rest assured there will be conversations on the district level as it pertains to, balancing our budget as we currently are already doing. We will have some form of a deficit going into next year, as has already been projected to be something. We will continue to update the board as we always have in this space. I know a lot of conversations have, surfaced around, Mr. Chady and the work that he has done. But please understand that everything that we do, of course, as a team, we're working together to make sure we get all the information to you all as best as we possibly can. I want everyone to know on the call today, I appreciate the discussion. Thank you for, of course, your Saturday and your time. But again, we will be, of course, updating the board as much as we possibly can in this area of our deficit year-over-year conversations that we've, of course, been in over the past few years here. And so, again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
I don't know that did anyone move already to adjourn?
I did. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Levy. So there's a motion to adjourn by Ms. Levy, seconded by Brian Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone, for your Saturday morning time.
Thank you.
Michelle, you can stop the recording.